Alright guys, it's been another hectic weekend of Championship football. We've still got another game to come tonight where Coventry take on Huddersfield, but in today's video we're going to be digesting the other 11 matches which have gone on this weekend. As always, I want to get your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you make of all the action? But without any further ado, let's jump in. Ryan says, as a Birmingham fan, we need to be better in the final third and start finishing more of our shots, but fair play to our defence and especially Ruddy for saving us when QPR started to attack. I think that's a fair summary of the game really. In terms of the overall quality in this one, wasn't the highest we saw over the Championship this weekend, but both Ruddy and Begovic were on top form for each of their sides. I think that QPR will probably see this one as a slightly better point, going away to Birmingham, keeping a solid clean sheet and also having a few goal line clearances, and like we say, Begovic coming up with some big saves as well, but they also caused some threats as the game went on. From a Blues perspective, this is becoming a little bit of a pattern in terms of them underachieving their attacking numbers. As things stand, Birmingham are the fourth biggest XG underperformer this season, which tells us they're getting into some decent areas, but more often than not it's their strikers who aren't being all too clinical. We saw that as a potential vulnerability with that Birmingham squad coming out of the transfer window, and I think over these past few weeks and performances we're starting to see that a little bit more. For Birmingham, that's now only 2 goals they've scored in their last 4 matches, and 3 of those games have been defeats, so John Eustace got a bit of work there to turn the momentum around. From a QPR perspective, I think that's a decent point on the road. Raving Engineer said Ipswich looked strong going forward but a little bit vulnerable at the back when Blackburn, who looked good going forward, asked questions. Ultimately though, the home crowd and the Mari Hutchinson's skills dug out the win. Another fantastic performance and result from this Ipswich squad, and there's really no stopping them right now. They're on a terrific run of form. That's now 4 wins on the bounce and they go up to second in the Championship. I think, like the comment says there, the potential Achilles heel for this Ipswich side later down the line in the season is going to be that slight vulnerability at the back, but the real strength with this team at the moment, especially when they play at Portman Road, is every game they look like scoring 2 or 3 goals, and already that sets them up at a massive advantage. From a Blackburn Rovers perspective, the results haven't quite been there recently, but the underlying performances I actually think have been fairly decent, and a lot of the numbers actually back that up as well. So far this season for Blackburn, they've accumulated the 4th highest XG in the Championship. They tend to get into really good attacking areas in each game, as they did in this game against Ipswich, causing them some problems, but ultimately those results just haven't quite come for John Dole Thomason's side so far, which is quite funny because a lot of the time with Blackburn it tends to be the opposite way around, where they'll have a really good start to the season with fantastic results, but the underlying numbers aren't quite there, and it would suggest that a regression is coming later down the line in the season. I actually think from a Blackburn point of view, this season could be flipped in its head almost, where they have a bit of a slow start, but heading in as the momentum gets going at the back end of the season, maybe things start to pick up then, because the numbers certainly would suggest that Blackburn are a better side than they're currently performing. You know, they're 14th in the Championship right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were, you know, higher than that in a couple of months' time. With Ipswich, it's a fantastic run they're on, and long may it continue. They've been a breath of fresh air in the Championship. EFL Finest said Leeds Masterclass looking like one of the best teams in the league at the minute, and I have to say I'd agree with that. At their best, I think Leeds are a match for any side in the Championship right now. They played Watford off the park in this game, but I truly think that in that sort of form they'd have caused problems to any other side in the Championship. From a Watford perspective, a few concerns popping up. I think that individually I wouldn't read all too much into this game, because I just think that Leeds are on another level with some of their attacking play in this one, but the overriding picture for Watford is now it's just 1 win from their last 7 matches. I think that their next upcoming game against Middlesbrough will tell us a lot about this side at the moment, because they are in need of that bounce back in that game. From a Leeds perspective though, really impressive stuff I have to say. 17 shots, 10 on target. It really was one-way traffic throughout this one, it looked like. Quite a few standout performances from a Leeds perspective. Dan James, Somerville and Rutter especially, all looking really good, and Perot along with that as that sort of forward quartet. First home win of the season now for Daniel Farke's side. Their away form had already been really strong, and it slowly feels like the puzzle pieces are falling into place for Leeds, and given how Farke's gone about with his Norwich sides in the past, it really does feel like a winning streak could only be around the corner for Leeds squad playing like that. Liam Chapman, who's a Bristol City fan, has some high praise for Leicester. He says Leicester are absolutely incredible at that 1 and 2 touch play, the best we've seen at this level in a while. As for us, we showed today that we can go to these big teams and somewhat compete. They won a penalty, and that shows that we definitely are a competitor at this level. I think that's a really fair reflection on this game. So far this season with Leicester, certainly in their first 5 or so matches, the results were all there, but the performances hadn't quite yet come. And I'd actually argue, while it was only a 1-0 win against Bristol City and it was a penalty which went on to be the winning margin between both sides, this was arguably Leicester's most complete and dominating performance of the season so far. Really good technical play. It looked like Dewsbury Hall and Harry Winks were absolutely bossing the show in the midfield. Harry Winks, by the way, a class above Championship level. But some really nice touches in and around the final third, and ultimately it was that penalty by Jamie Vardy which was the difference between the two sides. But Leicester getting in some really good areas. Slowly feels like this Maresca system is bedding in with this group right now. In my prediction, I did fancy Bristol City to nick a point on the road, and they did come fairly close to doing that, but ultimately just didn't quite have enough oomph in the final third to respond when Leicester did take the lead. But Leicester right now, top of the Championship, I think deservedly so. Do have a couple of tricky games coming up against Blackburn and my side North End, which I'll be keeping a close eye on, but other than that, not much to complain with Leicester right now. Al Browno says Boro were class today. That's the performance us Boro fans have been waiting for. If we can build momentum now and push on, I think we'll start pushing for the playoffs again. And ultimately, I think that's what it really comes down to for Middlesbrough. Can they use this first win of the season as a springboard for some momentum going forward? Because, I mean, let's face it, this was a good time to play this Southampton side. They're down on the confidence right now. It's now 4 defeats on the bounce, and Middlesbrough just found it far too easy to cut through them in this game. Boro created an XG of over 3 goals, could have had more than the 2 they scored, but credit to Middlesbrough, they came back from behind in this one, piled the pressure onto that Southampton back line, and ultimately, as soon as you go ahead and do that, the cracks start to appear. Mason Holgate, I've seen him twice so far this season in a Southampton shirt. He's been absolutely calamitous in both games. He was at fault for the first goal in this one, and like I was saying before, Middlesbrough finding it just far too easy. That's now 19 goals Southampton have conceded so far this season. Only Plymouth and Rotherham have conceded a higher XG than they have, so they're giving up high quality chances game upon game. It's 4 defeats on the bounce, and Russ Martin's now under pressure. The luxury he had at Swansea was that when Swansea went on these bad runs of form, and they definitely had them under Martin in both of his seasons there, the thing that he had in the bank was that they were sort of building towards a more longer term project. He didn't have all the puzzle pieces in play, whereas at Southampton, I don't think that same logic can be applied. It's one of the most expensive squads in the league right now. There's an abundance of talent all throughout that team, and man for man, Southampton are far better than 15th in the Championship, and that's currently where they find themselves. Next up for the Saints is a game against Leeds United, and right now I think that Leeds are probably licking their lips. Over to the Norwich game. As a Norwich fan, it was absolutely horrific all over the pitch. Worst performance for a Norwich team in 15 years since we lost 7-1 to Colchester on the opening day of League One, and like that defeat to Colchester all those years ago, Norwich really need to use this as a catalyst to turn their fortunes around. That defeat in midweek to Leicester is excusable. I think Leicester will do that to a lot of sides this season, but to ship 6 goals away to Plymouth, this has to be the wake-up call that Norwich used to get their season back on track. The gaps between Norwich's backline and midfield at time was absolutely criminal, and I know that Norwich were chasing the game, so those gaps will appear, but Plymouth just had it far too easy here. And let's not forget, this is a Plymouth side who were down on their confidence a bit coming into this game. They'd lost back-to-back away matches, that defeat in midweek to Bristol City being quite ugly, but this just shows how quickly momentum can shift in the Championship. And all throughout the season, Plymouth have looked good on the eye going forward, albeit they've not always been as clinical and ruthless as they probably should have been. Well, they absolutely put Norwich to the sword here. Morgan Whittaker, absolutely fantastic. Finn Azaz as well, having some really nice touches. The technique for his goal was absolutely exquisite, and yeah, they just played Norwich off the park here. Next up for the Canaries is a home game against Birmingham, and I mean, after that result, they really need a flip of fortunes to change the momentum, and quickly, because that sort of result, I mean, could lead to a downward spiral of form which isn't needed right now. A lot can be said about the injuries to Barnes and Sargent, but defensively Norwich were absolutely woeful in this one. Preston's winning streak did come to an end this weekend, but the unbeaten start to the season continues. We played out a 1-1 draw with Rotherham, and fair play to Rotherham, they made it difficult for us in this one. Jordan Hugill scored an absolute worldie, came somewhat against the run of play, but Hugo every now and again does have that sort of goal in him. Remember him scoring a very similar one for Preston all those years ago against Aston Villa at Villa Park. But North End, I thought, reacted really well to going behind, as we have done all season when we conceded first. Liam Lindsay with the equaliser, and then in the second half we had more than enough chances to go on and win this game, but Victor Johansson in net for Rotherham was just on a man mission to keep us out. One of, if not the best shot stoppers at this level when he's on form, and he was completely in this game to keep us out. Going off the numbers here, we can see Rotherham with next year just 0.09, Preston 1.76. It just wasn't our day in front of goal, and so far this season the script has often gone that Preston haven't always created that many chances, but we've been really clinical in taking the ones we have created. This game was sort of the opposite of that. I thought we got in some really good goal scoring positions, we just didn't quite have that clinical edge about us. Fair play and credit to Rotherham, I thought they defended really well for this game, and that's the sort of performance I expect to see for a lot of away sides going to Rotherham this season, where they are going to make it difficult for you. They're not going to give that much space in behind. It was a good battling performance from the Millers, and ultimately I think they'll take the point and move on. Dexter says, as a Wednesday fan, the warning alarms are ringing if they hadn't been since the start of the season. Good news is that I feel the defeat is a blessing in disguise, as it should be the final straw for XISCO. Not good enough, and I feel like that will echo the sentiments of a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans right now. They're now the only Championship club yet to win a match this season, rooted to the bottom of the Championship, and if they were ever going to show something under XISCO, this absolutely needed to be the performance. They were going up against the Swansea side, who were similarly down on their luck. They hadn't started the season well, but ultimately the Swans wiped the floor with them, beating them 3-0 in the end, and this really feels like it could be the end for XISCO. There's going to be a lot of attention on Hillsborough this weekend, as they're the Friday kick-off in the Championship, up against Sunderland. Whether XISCO will still be in the post or not, by then we'll have to wait and see. Good to get a Swansea perspective on this game as well. Still not sure if it was papering over the cracks or a start to the season for Duff. We played a very poor Sheffield Wednesday team, so it's hard to judge, but this definitely means Duff has relieved the pressure on him for another game or two. Completely agree with that sort of reasoning. Wouldn't be getting too carried away from a Swansea perspective right now, because Sheffield Wednesday have been by far and away the worst side in the league so far this season. Despite that, I do still think there's a lot of promise with this Swansea setup, particularly that forward line. We're seeing some nice touches there between Giannelli, Lowe, Yates and Patino. There's definitely potential to mould that into something. It's just whether Duff is the right man to get a consistent tune out of that squad. I do feel like the next 4 or so games will be the real acid test for this Swansea side under Duff, though, as they've got games against Millwall, Norwich, Plymouth and Leicester. Varying degrees of difficulty, and against sides that are going to play against Swansea in very different ways, and I feel like in those 4 games we'll learn quite a bit about Duff and whether or not this result meant anything. From a Millwall fan, good defending, but the 3 points so close if Fleming had scored the penalty, but I'll take it on the road, and I think that sums up the game quite well. I think that Millwall would have played the perfect away performance had Fleming stuck that penalty away, because I think that they'd have been quite content to sit back from that point onwards, shut out West Brom, and West Brom seemed to come alive a little bit more in the second half, open things up, but ultimately neither side had that quality to kill this game off, and didn't look like the highest quality game in the Championship this weekend. Goalless draw, not much can be read into that. Into the Sunday games, and things aren't getting much easier for Stoke right now. It was a 3-1 defeat to High Flyers Hull. For Hull, they're now up to 4th in the Championship, 7 undefeated, and playing some terrific football. Brilliant away performance from Liam Rossini's men in this one. Aaron Conley was all over that Stoke backline like a rash in the first half, and second half we got to see some brilliant football where ultimately Hull were just taking the mick by that point. I think a 17 pass move for that third goal, absolutely scintillating stuff from the Tigers. But from a Stoke perspective, they really find themselves in a rut right now. It's 5 games without a win, and I mean ultimately I think the Stoke board are patient enough to stick with Neil throughout these rocky patches, but it's a question of how much worse can things get for Stoke right now. You could tell the frustration coming out of that fan base by the boos going around the ground at different points of this match. 8 games in, they've only got 7 points on the board and are currently 20th in the table. It is still early days, and Stoke have a lot of new players to embed, and I think this sluggish start was always a possibility because of the high turnover of players. Performances as lacklustre as that are really quite hard to stomach, and it's not the easiest run of fixtures that Stoke have on the horizon either. Then finishing things off at the Stadium of Light, and it was Cardiff with another win. That's now 3 wins on the bounce for Errol Bullock's side. They've been in great form since that South Wales derby victory, and going off their next upcoming fixtures, I think there's every chance that this run for Cardiff continues into the next few weeks. They've got upcoming games against Rotherham, Middlesbrough and Watford, all quite winnable for the way Cardiff are playing right now, but Sunderland will probably be kicking themselves in the foot for this one. To concede a late goal, the fact that they had the better of this game for a lot of it, they were the team on top, the aggressor looking to take the game to Cardiff. They just didn't quite have that quality, and Cardiff ultimately had an answer to everything Sunderland threw at them. The sort of game where last season Amad Diallo will come up with a moment of magic to win the game by himself. They don't quite have that luxury this time, and despite some good overall play from the Black Cats, it was Cardiff who left with all 3 points. There we have it though, guys. That will wrap it up for today's video. Obviously, we do have a game going on in the Championship tonight as well. Very much looking forward to that one. But from the games that took place this weekend, do leave your thoughts on them in the comments down below. Other than that though, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.